Well, I can certainly say this was a surprise. I genuinely thought Sonic Forces was going to be a stellar game, and even went as far to call it my game of the year. If you've been living under a rock for the past couple of months, you just really don't keep up with Sonic the Hedgehog games, you'll soon come to know that two games were recently just released for the Blue Blur's 25th anniversary. Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces, the former of which has been seen as an incredible return to glory, finally giving fans the long-awaited true return to Sonic's Genesis platforming format, while the latter is seen as just being there. Sonic Forces is an interesting title, and for all the wrong reasons. Like, I've legitimately never felt so meh about a Sonic game before, or rarely have any words to describe it other than uninspired. Sonic Forces most definitely is not the spectacular return to modern Sonic Sega was hoping for, and that's really depressing. 4 years. We waited 4 years for this. First things first, I have to say, how did Sega manage to screw up a game that had so much going for it? I mean, the first thing we're shown in the game's reveal trailer is that it's a project from the teams that brought us Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations. Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations, the two most well-received modern Sonic games, coming together to make the granddaddy of boost games that sounded incredible. And speaking of incredible, the atmosphere and initial impressions this trailer gave off were amazing. We had absolutely no context to anything that was going on. All we could see was an enraged Sonic in a broken city, speeding to stomp the rampage of two ginormous Death Egg robots. The world needs a hero, hell yeah it needs a hero. I was so excited to see what was going on. Sega had just hit the mother of all swings and everyone was watching. But they missed. Apparently Classic Sonic was going to be in the game. Classic Sonic, the same Sonic who had just had a brand new game announced moments prior, was also going to be in this one? Why? What was the point? It would make sense if this Sonic Mania wasn't a thing, but that's not the case. It's redundant, especially if developers who actually understand Classic Sonic are working on the game. Your version would be inferior no matter how hard you tried, Sega. Why? And within those few couple of moments, Sonic Forces began its long descent on the slide of anguish and into the endless abyss of disappointment. I think I should preface this review by saying I don't hate Sonic Forces, not at all. I genuinely had a good time playing through the game the first time around, but a majority of that wasn't really the result of gripping gameplay that had me thirsty for more, rather the general experience in itself, and the fact that I'm also a Sonic fan. Let me explain. The main focus of Sonic Forces' marketing campaign was its story. 99% of the world had been conquered by Dr. Eggman, as a result of a strange power and assistance of a mysterious new villain. Sonic and company had formed a resistance against the Eggman Empire, but were genuinely struggling to keep it from total conquest. Sonic Forces had presented a scenario version of the Sonic series, and that in itself was enough to hook people in. After all these years of speculation as to what would happen if Eggman actually took over the world, we would finally be able to witness that ourselves. It was enticing, and Sega had set themselves up with the perfect opportunity. Ever since its reveal, Sonic Forces had been the title to pique the interest of the masses, and I was among that many. And obviously, it's just because of the story Sonic Forces was boasting. Here's where my first problem with Sonic Forces stems. The game's marketing, especially in regards to its story, was very misleading. After its debut, everyone was left clamoring for more. Who is this mysterious third playable character? What is this power that allowed Eggman to take over 99% of the world? Why is Classic Sonic here? I mean, we all know why Classic Sonic is here, but why is Classic Sonic here? Luckily, Sega was listening to our pleas and slowly began releasing more information about the game. The first real glimpse we had gotten to Sonic Forces was at South by Southwest when footage of the first modern Sonic stage, Sunset Heights, was revealed. We also had an early preview with the game's main theme, Fist Bump. Vocal songs were back, and that was incredible. And the game was finally given an official title and logo. Sonic Forces. I don't think there's a Sonic game I know of that has such a serious title and logo. I was already hyped, but now it was beginning to reach critical levels. I needed this game. And surprisingly, everything concerning Sonic Forces afterwards really excited me. Even the custom hero. I will admit, it shocked me at first, but the more I watched the trailer, the more curious I was to see how exactly Sonic Team had implemented this feature. And then E3 came around, and the demos were released. And oh boy, was there a myriad of different opinions. Some people really liked the game, others hated it, but a majority didn't really care. At this point in time, all eyes were on Sonic Mania. Forces was simply an afterthought, and even if the demos presented at E3 didn't generate the Forces hype Sega had wanted, the E3 trailer most certainly did. It starts off pretty vanilla, showing off things we had already seen at the event and prior, but its finale was what had truly got people talking. Sonic and Co are once again standing in this ruined city, seemingly overwhelmed by a mysterious group of villains. The camera pans up not only to reveal Shadow, but Metal Sonic, Zavik, and Chaos, alongside a brand new character. This game looked absolutely insane. Everything about it seemed to push the boundaries of past modern Sonic games, and I loved it. Sonic Forces quickly became my most anticipated title. I wanted to play it so bad. Mania came out soon afterwards, and to no one's surprise, it was pretty good. But now that it was done and over with, everyone's attention shifted to Sonic Forces. The fan base was split. Some people loved the game and others hated it. Slowly, more information was released in the form of new stages, trailers, music, and confirmation of DLC in the form of episode Shadow and in-game avatar items. But even with this new influx of game info, many people were still unsure about Force's overall quality. November 7th was approaching quickly, and soon this debate would be settled. The day finally arrived, and to put it simply, Sonic Forces was not the big return Sega had intended it to be. I think the best place to start with this review is with the gameplay, as this is the most important aspect of any video game. As I already said, Sonic Forces offers 3 gameplay styles: Modern Sonic, Classic Sonic, and your own custom avatar, with each style having distinct gameplay elements that set them apart from the rest. This has been something apparent throughout most modern Sonic games, as having different playstyles usually lengthen the game's playthrough and provides the player with more variety to potentially increase replayability. I personally have no problem with this approach, as having multiple playstyles that play off of one another is the biggest reason why I enjoy the classic titles so much. Both Tails and Knuckles play similarly enough to Sonic to stay true to the original format, but provide minor changes in critical areas to give the gamer an entirely new experience. But usually that's not the case with boost titles, as most playstyles are radically different from their counterparts. Modern Sonic controls similarly to how he did in Unleashed, Colors, and Generations. The boost is back along with the stomp, slide, Colors' double jump, and the homing attack. This is a tremendous win in my book, as I myself am a huge fan of the boost format. I just think mastering Sonic's moveset and using each ability in quick succession to get to the end of the stage as fast as possible is incredibly addicting, especially since the moveset plays so well off of itself. If you're boosting in an area that requires accuracy, stomp to reposition yourself. If the homing attack is too slow to get you the time you're aiming for, just slide or boost into enemies. If you're boosting and come across a really tight corner, just drift around it to keep the momentum going. If you're... Wait a minute. Sonic Forces doesn't have the drift. Why? This genuinely confuses me. I have no idea why Sonic Team thought removing the drift would benefit the boost in any way. From any perspective, it's a mechanic that makes sense. Hell, it's a technique that works even in real life, so it's beyond me as to why Sonic Team thought it'd be a good idea to remove it. Honestly, this is probably why so many modern Sonic stages in Sonic Forces are so linear. If there's no move designated to help the player turn, they won't design stages with turns in mind. As a result, Forces' modern level design is left feeling super simplistic and uninspired. Many people will argue that Modern Seaside Hill is the best boost stage ever, and I tend to agree. The stage is really open and allows the player to go anywhere they want, only accomplished by excellent consideration of the boost and its complementary moves, especially the drift. And considering that there are multiple moments in the game where I have died as a result of me not having the boost, specifically here in Luminous Forest and here in Metropolitan Highway, this change benefited absolutely no one, and only made Modern Sonic feel weird. Sonic Team also decided to remove the short hop, which isn't as prominent of a change as removing the drift, but still is noticeable, especially if you had mastered using it to get faster times, such as myself. Other than these revisions, Modern Sonic plays fairly well. The boost is just the boost, but the newly reworked air boost is insanely fun, especially if you can manage to pull it off without falling off of the stage. The homing attack, on the other hand, is kind of unresponsive. I've had to struggle to get the reticle to lock on robots that'll get me to where I want to go. I've never had this problem in Unleashed, Colors, or even Generations for that matter. Another terrible mechanic is the quick step. In this game, it's mapped to two different control schemes, the control stick and the bumpers. Usually I'll opt for the bumpers because I play Unleashed and Generations more than I do Colors, but here neither one really works. There have been tons of times where I've tried a quick step one way or the other and it doesn't really do anything. This has led to tons of deaths during my playthrough, especially here in Final Judgment. It's terrible. The stomp is so simple not even Sega could mess it up, but the slide is a whole lot faster this time around and very sensitive to input. Other than that, it's fine, but put to no practical use here. There's only one instance in which I used the slide intentionally, which was here in Network Terminal. Out of all things, Sonic Team, why did you choose to keep the slide, but remove the drift? Who was working on... Okay, that makes sense, sorry. The only other problem I had with Modern Sonic is that he feels slippery. His movements are really sensitive, and I just felt like he was sliding all over the place whenever I would move even an inch. Based on what I've said, you may think that Modern Sonic's controls and his stages are complete garbage, but that's not really the case. At best, they're decent, but definitely nowhere near as fun as that of Unleashed and Generations. Not only did those games have tight controls, but also killer level design to boot that would actually warrant the player to get better at the game. This is something that is entirely non-existent in Sonic Forces, and it confuses me that Sega managed to somehow take a step back. Especially after all the positive fan feedback they received for the past Sonic titles, this game was apparently inspired by. Fortunately, I do think the avatar is more well executed. If anything, the avatar creator feature in Sonic Forces is the most developed aspect. Not only is there a wide variety of clothing and accessories you can equip to your avatar, there's also a heavy amount of Wispawn and their respective variants to keep you coming back for more. Wispawn are basically weapons that utilize Wisp color power to help the player traverse through the stage and plow through hordes of enemies. In Sonic Forces, there are 7 main types of Wispawn. Burst, which allows players to propel themselves through the air and blow through enemies with a powerful flamethrower. Lightning, which allows players to zip through a trail of rings and slice through Eggman's forces with an electrifying whip. Drill, which allows players to cling through the walls, the ground, and release a whirlwind to plow through enemies. Cube turns enemies into rings and creates a tower of blocks under the player mid-air. Asteroid has mini clones follow the avatar that can lock on and destroy multiple enemies at once, which also surround your character, making him or her invulnerable while drawing in items. Hover releases a gust of wind and allows your avatar to fly for a few moments, and Void, well, releases a void that sucks up enemies and items. It also allows the player to warp in any direction. The avatar's arsenal is pretty diverse and allows for the player to tackle stages in their own creative ways. It's genuinely cool to see Sonic Team introduce such an engaging gameplay style. Movement-wise, the avatar plays almost entirely like Modern Sonic, aside from he or she not having the boost, nor curling up to a ball when jumping. The homing attack has also been reworked into its slower counterpart known as the wire attack. Honestly, the avatar is my favorite part of this entire game. I'm not one to divulge in the creation of original Sonic characters. I've literally only had one my entire life, and that only lasted for a couple of weeks. So I think it's really impressive Sonic Team managed to develop and properly incorporate the character creation feature into a AAA Sonic game that wasn't complete garbage. I honestly wouldn't be angry if the Wispawn returned to the Sonic franchise in some form or another. It was a treat to go back and replay stages, to explore other routes with different Wispawn. I think the level design benefited because of this as well. There are tons of paths accessible based on the Wispawn you choose, leaving the player with fairly open levels to explore. I think the only problem I really had with this playstyle was that I felt like I was fighting against the jump mid-air, which made platforming a pain, especially in Guardian Rock. I still have no idea why they didn't just have your avatar mimic Sonic's jumping scheme, especially since they do that during the double boost section, but whatever. Now on to the worst part of this game bar none. Classic Sonic. I think everyone saw this coming. Classic Sonic is not a very valuable addition to Sonic Forces. The controls and physics do not meet the standards of what is expected from a classic 2D Sonic game. Nothing about his movement feels responsive, nothing. Something always felt off whenever I was playing as classic Sonic. Like there was some sort of delay, and that made jumping onto a chain of enemies and rolling down slopes feel super unsatisfying. A reality that sucks considering the fact that using momentum gained from those actions to finish the stage as fast as possible is the main appeal of classic Sonic. He feels just as forced here as he was into the story. But honestly, I think his level design is absolutely killer here, and I would love to see it be modded into Mania some way or another. Death Egg and Mania's tight-ass gameplay would be so good. Overall though, I think the biggest problem gameplay-wise is that for some reason, every now and then, Sonic, Classic, and the avatars slow down and speed up randomly. What is the purpose of this? I've died so many times as a result of Sonic and the avatar sprinting as fast as it can without me putting in the required input. And it's even worse in 2D for the aforementioned characters and Classic. Remember that juicy ass momentum that was present in the classics? It's not here. They do what they want at their own discretion, so taking paths from the stage only accessible by rolling down a slope and reaching top speeds is a total pain sometimes. The last playstyle is the tag team stages, which allow the player to control Sonic and the avatar simultaneously. I really don't know what to say considering the fact that we only have 2 real tag team stages, Arsenal, Pyramid, and Null Space. It's fun the first time around, but since they're so short, you really don't have any time to savor the experience. It simply seemed like an afterthought. I think aside from Classic, Sonic had a pretty solid basis for something great here, and I honestly believe they should have delayed this game to further develop them. Take Classic out of the picture and put a heavier emphasis on the other stages and you have one hell of a game on your hands. Speaking of hell, let's talk about this game's story because oh boy, is it quite interesting. The game begins with Sonic zooming through Sand Hill to the aid of Tails and a couple of random civilians in some city under the siege of Dr. Eggman. Once Sonic arrives on the scene, he attempts to put an end to Eggman's assault when he is thwarted by 4 enemies from his past: Shadow, Zavik, Metal Sonic, and Chaos. This is also where Sonic meets Infinite for the very first time, and where he receives the best animated ass whooping in the history of any Sonic game. Like legit, this game has some incredibly animated cutscenes, but apparently Sonic dies here. 6 months later, Eggman manages to conquer almost the entirety of the globe. Knuckles and company form a resistance against the Eggman Empire, but their efforts are futile as morale and hope is incredibly low as a result of Sonic's absence. This is where your avatar comes in, a survivor of Eggman's attack on the city. I guess Sonic wasn't the only person to die here. Shortly after you join the Resistance, Knuckles receives new intel that Sonic is actually still alive. Ecstatic, the Resistance sends you to one of Eggman's northern-based chemical plants, where you steal a shuttle and fly into space to rescue Sonic from the Death Egg. Meanwhile, Tails is busy in the city trying to repair demolished Omega when he's attacked by Chaos. Cornered and scared out of his shoes, Tails is saved by the returning Classic Sonic, hot off the heels of Sonic Mania. With hope of saving the world sparked within him once again, Tails and Classic Sonic head back to the Resistance. On the way, the pair learn Eggman has a contingency plan they'll execute after 3 days to rid himself of Sonic and the Resistance. After your avatar rescues Sonic, the two of you escape Eggman's spaceborne battle station and head back to the surface. I won't go into further detail here, as the story up until the end is pretty much one mission to the next. But I do think the finale gets a little bit spicier as the stakes are raised tenfold. Eggman's 3-day plan was actually to drop the entire sun on Sonic's world. I felt genuine tension while watching this cutscene and vocally expressed my excitement. After that, Sonic, along with the player, has their final confrontation with Infinite, infiltrate Eggman's Imperial Tower, and crumbles his army from the inside out. Under the guise of being defeated, Eggman ambushes Sonic and crew in his new Phantom Ruby-powered Death Egg robot, which leads into the final confrontation and consequential liberation of the globe. After the destruction of the Phantom Ruby, Classic Sonic is returned to his dimension and the Resistance is disbanded. Sonic runs off to his next adventure, while your avatar ziplines into the sunset. Now that the recap is done, let me begin explaining the reasons behind my confliction with Sonic Force's story. On the surface, I'm sure many of you were satisfied with the narrative Forces presented. It was intriguing and at times had excellent execution. Cutscenes like the confrontation with Infinite and Mystic Forest and interactions such as the one between characters during stages can sometimes do an excellent job at developing the world Sonic and his friends are now living in. But that's the problem. It's a situational thing. Sonic Forces is plagued with vexing tonal choices and shifts. It's super inconsistent. As I said before, one of Force's main selling points was that it was going to be the most high-stakes Sonic story we've ever seen. If SEGA wanted to do a serious story, more power to them. I've always been interested in it. The problem is, if you want to do a serious story, you have to be very deliberate with it. Pulling off any environment is like perfecting a cookie recipe. All ingredients must be present and within their respective proportions, otherwise you'll end up with an incoherent mess. That's what Force's story feels like. Sega never goes all in with this grim situation they're presenting. They get close but never tackle it head on. It's the typical case of show and tell. During the entirety of the game, we're always being told about the atrocities Eggman committed against the world and its people, about how much of a scumbag he is. Yet we never see any of these transgressions. We don't see Eggman actually fully invade a city, we never see anyone aside from Sonic get hurt, and most important of all, we never see the full extent of the effect Eggman's conquest is having on the world's people. Usually, if your home is being ravaged by a dictator, you'd be very depressed, but these guys are cracking jokes left and right. I mean, they literally say Sonic has spent the past 6 months being tortured, and yet the first time we see him after his presumable death, he's chipper and already trash-talking. Why? Being a prisoner of war is one of the most horrific things that can happen to any soldier. You're starved, worked to the bone, and are stripped of all humanity. It's quite literally hell on earth, seemingly eternal suffering. But guess what? Most of these POWs have the benefit of being captured by armies that don't have long-standing grudges against them. Sonic was literally the only thing keeping Eggman from complete and total global conquest. I mean, after he was out of the picture, the Doctor managed to induct 99% of the world into the Eggman Empire. I'd be pissed too if one wise-ass, smug-talking hurdle was keeping me from accomplishing my goals for the equivalent of 25 years. If I ever got the chance to do whatever I wanted to him, I'd put him through the 7th gate of hell and back. Sonic should be broken and angry. He should have jumped at the chance to get back at Zavok and in turn Eggman as soon as it presented itself. Not only would this shift in attitude for Sonic surprise the player, but it would cement in their minds that this is the real deal. Eggman and Sonic are locked in a total war, and the fate of the planet lies in the balance. Throughout the story, Sonic should be shocked, saddened, but most of all, angry. Everything he has come to love has been destroyed, and there was nothing he could do about it. All those years of fighting down the drain, he was plowed through in an instant by the man whom he would beat day in and day out prior. Frustration should be something he's never felt before, leading him to act out of the norm. This anger should especially manifest whenever he sees Infinite, as he's the root of all of Sonic's suffering to begin with. Over the course of the story, he should push himself to overcome Infinite, and have that power be put to use during the final confrontation, where he wins because of his own will, not the power of friendship or heart. This keeps the story grounded, but most of all realistic. A game about war should tackle themes prominently dealt with throughout war, but since Forces seems like a slightly bad day in an average week, this isn't very feasible. It's over as fast as it starts, and the game isn't nearly as long enough to feel like an actual struggle. The story had so much potential, and Sega had set the stage for something truly incredible to go down. They could do this one time, but they blew it. The narrative Forces had teased in its various trailers was a complete facade. I don't feel as though I overhyped myself, rather I was blatantly lied to. That quartet of villains Sega was hyping up, they're all fake. None of them are real, despite it being alluded to that they were the actual characters in various interviews. I was also left with a ton of questions that weren't addressed in the game. I know there are 4 tie-in comics released for Forces, but I should be able to get the full scope of a video game while playing the video game. Not once did we see who Infinite was, got a clear reason for classic Sonic's presence in the modern universe, where the Phantom Ruby from Mania went, and so on and so forth. You know you haven't done a good job writing a story if the consumer leaves the experience with trivial questions that could have already been answered. This is such a good concept, but the execution really isn't anything special. As a matter of fact, Forces as a whole isn't really anything special. Everything about it is so vanilla. Pretty much everything aside from graphics and music, both of which are phenomenal by the way. I was honestly surprised about how diverse this game's sound presentation was, as I honestly expected to hear heaps of synthesization. Light of Hope, Metropolitan Highway, and Ghost Town being some of my favorite tracks. And Hedgehog Engine 2 looks absolutely beautiful. To wrap this all up, let me say this. Forces is just Sonic Forces, another Sonic game that'll just be there. A reminder of what could have been but wasn't. It's not bad, it's really not good. It's just Sonic Forces. And while I did have tons of fun playing the game and have loads of people around me try it out and really like it, I still have to admit, Sonic Forces doesn't do anything noteworthy. Everything Sega was hyping up pre-release fell flat on its face. So many good ideas wasted. Sega, if you ever want your mascot to be taken seriously again, you're gonna have to step it up in the future. You're going to have to produce a title that is worth your time and ours. We don't want another half-baked year-long produced game, we want our equivalent of Super Mario Odyssey. Give us a game to brag about. If you haven't done so yet, I heavily implore you to take the Sonic Forces survey posted by Sega. that of which I'll link in the description below. Give them meaningful and respectful feedback, help point them in the right direction. But ironically, I don't even think the worst part of Sonic Forces is the game itself. I think it's the reception of the game. Everything that has happened within this fanbase before and after release has been genuinely toxic. We've been at each other's throats over a Sonic game. A fucking Sonic game. Yes, the promotional material we received for Forces was questionable to say the least, but that doesn't justify our starting a war over it. And the way people are acting about the game now that it's out is just as bad. At the end of the day, despite how important Sonic may be to all of us, he's still just a video game character. We're real people with real emotions, and the developers of this game are real people with real emotions. There's no reason for us to break each other down over a blue hedgehog of all things, so I beg of you, fans, SEGA, Sonic Team, take a break. Sonic needs it, we need it, the industry needs it. We have enough Sonic games and other franchises to keep us busy for the time being. Let your people work on new and existing IPs, SEGA. They've already expressed interest in doing so. And take that time to rework Sonic Team by helping its members truly understand what makes Sonic the icon he is today and why that works. Sonic is one of the few remaining Japanese video game characters that aren't from Nintendo. His existence in this industry is crucial. He needs to be handled with care and love, so please, SEGA, give him the time to recuperate. And then hit us with the greatest comeback of the century.
Until the